The message came close to midnight, lighting up Emma Carter's phone while the house sat quiet and dark around her. Outside, rain hit the windows hard, the kind of storm that made even familiar places feel uncertain. The text was short, almost casual, but it made her chest tighten the moment she read it. "Power's out at my place. Any chance I can stay over tonight?" It was from Daniel Brooks, a name tied to memories she usually kept locked away. Her first instinct was to say no. Her second was to hesitate. By the time the clock hit 11:47 p.m., she was already typing yes. Emma told herself it was only kindness. Daniel wasn't a stranger. He was someone she had known for years, someone she had trusted. He was also her husband's closest friend, or at least he used to be. Mark had moved to Chicago 6 months earlier for a big job opportunity, promising Emma it would only be for a short time. At first, there were long calls and hopeful plans. Then the calls became shorter, then less frequent. And lately, there had been days of silence that felt louder than any argument. Emma had learned how to live with that quiet, even though it hurt. When the doorbell rang, Emma felt a strange mix of relief and nerves. She opened the door to find Daniel standing there, rain dripping from his jacket, his hair damp, his expression tired but polite. He looked different from the last time she had seen him. Not worse, just heavier, like life had added weight to his shoulders. "Thanks for letting me come over," he said. His voice was calm, but there was something unsure beneath it. "Of course," Emma replied, stepping aside. "You can use the guest room." They didn't hug. They didn't linger. Everything stayed careful, respectful. Daniel wiped his shoes, hung his jacket, and followed her inside. The house felt warmer with another person in it, but also smaller. Like the walls were paying attention. They talked in the kitchen, keeping the conversation safe. The storm, the power outage, work, neutral topics that didn't touch the past. Emma made tea. Daniel thanked her twice. Every word felt measured, as if both of them were trying not to disturb something fragile. Still, memories slipped through the cracks. Emma remembered barbecues in the backyard, Daniel laughing with Mark, the three of them joking like family. Back then, everything felt solid. Now, even standing in her own kitchen, Emma felt like she was balancing on something thin. Daniel noticed her silence. "You okay?" he asked gently. "I'm fine," she said quickly, forcing a smile. "Just tired." He nodded, not pushing. That was always his way. Respectful, thoughtful. It was part of what made him easy to trust and harder to ignore. The lights flickered for a moment, making Emma's heart jump. Daniel gave a small smile. "Looks like the storm's not done yet." "Guess not," Emma said. She handed him a towel. "Guest room's ready whenever you want." They stood there for a second longer than necessary, neither of them moving. Then Daniel cleared his throat. "Thanks again, Emma. Really?" She watched him walk down the hall, his footsteps quiet against the floor. When the guest room door closed, Emma released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She went to her bedroom and changed, trying to shake the restless feeling crawling under her skin. She told herself this night meant nothing. Helping someone didn't mean crossing a line. Being lonely didn't give her permission to complicate things. She lay down, turned off the lamp. Sleep didn't come easily. Sleep didn't come easily. The house made small sounds, settling around her. Wind pressed against the walls. Rain tapped steadily on the roof. Emma's thoughts wandered despite her efforts. She thought about Mark, about how distant he had sounded the last time they spoke, about the empty side of the bed she had grown used to, about how strange it felt to have another person under her roof again. At some point, she checked the time. 3:12 a.m. Emma sat up, her heart beating faster for no clear reason. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't guilty. She just felt awake in a way that went deeper than her body. She listened, half expecting to hear movement from the guest room. But there was only silence. She lay back down, one hand resting on her chest, trying to calm herself. This was just a night. By morning, Daniel would leave. Life would return to normal. She repeated that thought until it almost felt true. Eventually, exhaustion pulled her under. When Emma woke again, pale morning light filled the room. For a moment, she forgot everything. Then it rushed back the storm. The message, Daniel's sleeping somewhere down the hall. She sat up, smoothing her hair, already planning how the morning would go. Coffee, polite conversation, a simple goodbye. She stepped into the hallway and noticed the guest room door was open. The bed was neatly made, untouched, as if no one had slept there at all. Emma's stomach tightened. She checked the bathroom, empty. The living room, empty. A sudden noise made her turn, a soft clink coming from the kitchen. Daniel stood at the counter, sunlight catching the side of his face as he stirred a mug. He looked calm, almost comfortable, like this was something they had done many times before. "Oh," Emma said, surprised. "Good morning." "Morning," Daniel replied. "I hope you don't mind. I couldn't sleep, so I made coffee." "That's fine," she said, though her voice sounded distant to her own ears. They sat at the table, steam rising between them. The storm had passed, leaving the world outside fresh and bright, as if nothing heavy had happened overnight. Inside, Emma felt the opposite. Daniel broke the silence. "I didn't expect this," he said carefully. "Being here." Emma wrapped her hands around her mug. "Me neither." He nodded, staring into his coffee. "You seem different." "So do you," she replied softly. They looked at each other, then really looked. There was no accusation in Daniel's eyes, no expectation, just understanding. Emma realized something in that moment. The shock wasn't that Daniel had stayed over. It wasn't that he was standing in her kitchen sharing coffee like it was normal. The shock was the quiet truth settling in her chest. She wasn't as alone as she had told herself, and that scared her. Daniel stood after a moment. "I should head out." Emma nodded, though part of her wished he wouldn't. She walked him to the door, her thoughts racing faster than her steps. At the doorway, Daniel paused. "Thank you for tonight," he said. "It meant more than you know." She watched him leave, the door closing softly behind him. Emma stood there long after he was gone, the house silent again, her heart heavier than before. She had thought it was just a sleepover. She was starting to realize it was much more than that. The next morning, Emma Carter woke up to sunlight instead of rain, and the house felt too quiet. She lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling, trying to shake off the strange feeling that had settled in her chest. Last night, she told herself, was just a sleepover. But now, with the storm gone and the world bright and calm, she couldn't shake the sense that something had changed. She pushed her blankets aside and walked into the hallway, expecting to see the guest room door closed, the bed used, the house normal again. Instead, the guest room door stood open. Emma froze. The bed looked untouched, the sheets smooth like nobody had slept there. The room was empty, as if it had never been used at all. Her stomach tightened. She walked slowly toward the kitchen, her heart beating faster with every step. She didn't know why, but she felt like she was stepping into something she couldn't control. Then she heard the sound of a spoon tapping a mug. Daniel was in her kitchen, standing by the counter, making coffee like he belonged there. He turned when he heard her, his face calm but his eyes revealing a deep tiredness. The sight of him was both comforting and confusing. She had expected him to leave early, to thank her politely, and disappear into the day like nothing happened. Instead, he was here. "Good morning," Emma said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Morning," Daniel replied, then hesitated. "I hope you don't mind. I couldn't sleep, so I made coffee." Emma nodded, but the nod felt empty. She watched him set the mug down, his hands steady, his movements careful. The kitchen felt smaller now, as if the air itself had changed. They sat at the table, both of them quiet for a moment. The morning light spilled in through the windows, making everything look peaceful. But Emma couldn't shake the tension. She felt like the house was holding its breath. Daniel spoke first, his voice low. "I didn't expect to feel this way." Emma stared at her mug, pretending to focus on the steam rising from it. "Feel what?" "Like I'm not alone," he said, finally looking up. "Like, this is something that matters." Emma's throat tightened. She didn't want to admit it, but she felt the same. She had spent months trying to pretend she was okay, that Mark's distance didn't hurt. She had built a life of routines and quiet evenings, trying to convince herself that her heart was safe. But last night, when Daniel had walked through her door, something in her had loosened. The silence between them stretched, heavy and full. Emma tried to keep her voice calm. "You can stay as long as you need. I mean, if you need to." Daniel shook his head. "No, I shouldn't. I didn't know what to do with myself." He stared out the window for a moment, watching the street outside. The neighborhood looked normal. Kids rode bikes. A neighbor walked a dog. Life was moving on like nothing was wrong. Emma felt her eyes burn. She didn't want to cry. She didn't want to make this real. But Daniel's words had opened a door in her heart she didn't know was locked. She looked at him and asked, "Are you okay, Daniel?" He sighed. "No, not really. Things have been hard." Emma nodded slowly. "Same." There was no need to explain. They both knew what hard meant. For Emma, it meant waking up to an empty side of the bed and pretending it didn't matter. For Daniel, it meant living alone and feeling like he was losing himself in the quiet. Daniel set his mug down and stared at the table. "I'm sorry," he said suddenly. "I know this is awkward. I didn't mean to bring anything up." Emma shook her head quickly. "No, it's fine." But it wasn't fine. She could feel the truth pressing against her ribs. Daniel stood, running a hand through his hair. "I should go." Emma's heart dropped. She had expected him to leave. She had even hoped for it in a way. But now that he was standing up, ready to walk out, she felt a sudden panic. "I can drive you," she blurted. Daniel paused. "No, it's okay. I'll be fine." Emma didn't want to argue. She wanted to keep him there, even if only for a little longer. She wanted to hear more of his voice. She wanted to feel less alone. Daniel walked toward the door, but he stopped before reaching it. He turned back toward her, and for a moment his eyes looked vulnerable. "Emma," he said softly. "Last night, it felt like something I've been missing." Emma's heart raced. She didn't know how to respond. She didn't want to encourage anything that would complicate her life, but she couldn't deny the truth. The truth was that she had missed him too, not just as a friend, but as someone who had always understood her without needing her to explain. Someone who had made her laugh when she felt like crying. Someone who had been there when Mark was gone, even if he didn't realize it. Daniel's voice broke slightly. "I know you're still married. I know that's important. I'm not trying to take anything away from you." Emma's eyes filled with tears she didn't want to show. She looked down at her hands, gripping the edge of the table. "I'm not sure what I am anymore," she whispered. Daniel stepped closer, but he didn't touch her. He simply stood there, waiting, giving her space. His presence felt like a warm hand on a cold shoulder. Emma swallowed hard. She knew she was at a crossroads. She could choose to stay where she was, where things were safe but lonely. Or she could let herself feel something new, something that might hurt but might also heal her. Daniel's voice was quiet now. "I didn't come here to cause trouble. I came because I needed someone who cares." Emma nodded, and her voice shook when she spoke. "I care." He looked at her then, and she could see it in his eyes, the same emotions she was trying to hide. There was sadness, yes, but also something else. Something like hope. Daniel stepped back and picked up his keys from the counter. "I'll go," he said, but he didn't move toward the door. Emma stared at him, waiting for the moment when he would finally leave. He finally spoke, softer than before. "I don't know what's going on between us, but I do know that last night changed things." Emma's heart felt like it was being squeezed. She wanted to deny it. She wanted to say it didn't matter. But she knew better. The truth was sitting between them like a third person at the table. Daniel turned to leave again, but this time he stopped at the doorway and looked back. "Emma," he said, "I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to lose you either." Emma felt the words hit her like a wave. She didn't expect to feel so strongly, so quickly. But her heart was already racing, and she knew there was no turning back. She didn't know what the future would bring, but she knew one thing for sure. This morning had changed her life. She stood there watching him walk away, and realized that what she had thought was just a simple sleepover had become something far more complicated. Something that might lead to heartbreak, or something that might finally bring her the love she had been missing. And as the door clicked shut behind him, Emma stood in the quiet kitchen, staring at the empty space where he had been, knowing that nothing would ever feel the same again.